Welcome back, everyone. As long as I remember, I have been a big movie fan. I have also worked in the VFX industry for the past 20 years, give or take. Although I'm definitely not a gamer, I also work in the game industry for a few years. So, that being said, on this build, I will do something a little different. I will put aside the movies and make a prop replica from the game, Bioshock, the grenade launcher. To make the blueprint, I gather some game footage, but mostly a lot of fan art from the web. And it will, of course, be available in the description if you ever feel like building your own. Kathleen Woodward, Cordell Felix, thank you so much for the inspiration. Your work was really useful. But even with these great references, I took some liberty over the design. Otherwise, where's the fun in that? But don't get me wrong, screen accuracy is great, but my main concern is always to build something super cool and enjoy the process. The day it will no longer be the case, I'll simply stop. Alright, now back to the project itself. Where to kick off a project is always a big question. In this case, I started with the barrel and the tip of the launcher. Why? Well, I don't really have a good answer, but I guess it was as good as any other place. For the barrel, it was simply an exhaust pipe that I cut to fit. But as for the big fat tip in the front of the launcher, it was another story. I decided to push the limit of my mini lathe with a 3 inches and a quarter aluminum rod. But hey, I got there, right? I sometimes make dumb decisions, like trying to turn an exhaust pipe on the lathe, for instance. Yeah, did not quite work as expected. I guess there's no shortcut to quality after all. So back to aluminum, but at least it allowed me to process the entire back of the launcher that will connect to the handle in a single solid piece, which ended up to be a really good decision. One of the key features of the launcher is the spark plug on the top. In order to accommodate the plug on the back part, I drilled a hole and used my press drill as a milling machine. A press drill is not meant for lateral cuts, but it got the job done in this case. I then tackled the receiver of the handle that would eventually connect to the back part. I even tried aluminum welding, and for first time it did turn out okay. To get a good fit, I milled some more metal from the back. The good thing about this was that I was milling like this for the last time. A lovely surprise came on later in the build. Then the handle itself. Nothing fancy, cutting some wood to shape and a little sanding for a nice finish. The part that connects the front and back was made by layering few aluminum bars together. Because it went so well the first time, I made some more aluminum welding. It's actually pretty easy to achieve and it's fun. I had its screws from my stash. These screws won't do anything except adding cool details to the structure. Same process for the trigger. An aluminum bar cut to shape, plus some filing to round up everything nicely. Next, I added a connector and fixed the trigger to it with a nice Chicago screw. I cut the two ring scollet to shape. To fix everything together, I use one of my favorite technique, which is the good old rivets. As I probably mentioned before, rivets are really easy to use and pretty cheap. In fact, one of my first costumes was made of metal and rivets when I was 12 years old. Another specific feature on the launcher is the battery on the side. I wasn't going to reinvent the wheel here, so a regular 9V battery would do just fine as a base. I made a custom holder for it with a metal sheet and my cutters. Then folded everything accordingly using my metal sheet bending pliers. They are pretty useful. I made a custom decal stickers using GIMP, printed it, and sticked it to the battery. The result was pretty good. Afterward, I addressed the brass guard on the barrel where the two visors would eventually sit. While working in the shop, something amazing happened. A very special delivery arrived. My own milling machine was finally here, and I wasn't going to wait any longer to use it. I made the two visors. For the brass ornament on the front of the barrel, I really had to scratch my head to figure out a nice way to do it. I came up with the idea of cutting thin brass sheets and glued them to the barrel. I used tape to make sure I had the proper length, put my headphones on, and got to work. I have to admit that I was really happy with the result. I made the pommel with a big chunk of brass. I rough cut the piece, made some holes, glued it with epoxy to ease the drilling process into the wood, then screwed it in place. I finally shaped up everything on the belt sander. To make the grenade launcher, I of course needed a few tin cans. I didn't need the content, but I wasn't going to waste it either. I know in the game the can labels are supposed to be evaporated milk and asparagus, but like I said at the beginning, I did take some liberty over the design. I made new stickers of my own based on vintage decals that I found and print them out. More rivets to solidify everything together, and I made an extra piece on the lathe to fit inside the barrel, just to make sure that I had a good grip on everything. Since I'm not a gamer at all, I don't really know if the next piece is in the game itself. Nevertheless, the fan art I use as a reference had it, and I simply thought that it looked way more interesting with this part on top. As for the dial, I pretty much use the same technique as I use on Furiosa's arm. I made a dial mount using random scrap pieces. Drilled a bunch of holes for the mount and the future cable. Test fitted everything. Painted the canister. Printed more decals. Covered the dial with a fake glass. Added the labels, and voila! The belt for the canister was made the good old-fashioned way. Some cheap leather, gum tack to smooth the edges, poke some holes, add the buckle, and lock everything together with some nice brass rivets. I then added the red electric wires with some metallic stripe on it to connect the battery to the spark plug. The green cable for the canister was faked using a green rope that I darkened using some acrylic paint. It was then connected from the canister, going through a little clip that I made to finally end up at the bottom of the barrel. The handle was permanently fixed at the back using 5 minutes epoxy glue. I later faked a weld around it using hot glue and a nice coat of Robin Buff for a pretty convincing result. After 1 month of work, I was finally getting to the finish line. But a build is never really complete without a nice weathering pass. Nothing too crazy here. A few washes of acrylic paint, a little rust powder here and there, some mud podge to get a better shine from the handle and the decals, and magically, everything came to life.